This morning, we've got Coach Greg Simmons out of Charlotte Christian High School. He is the head baseball coach there. We also have Coach Reid Fronk, who kind of a jack of all trades, really. He's one of the assistants on the varsity baseball team at Charlotte Christian as well, but he also helps with the football team, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, both teams are coming off a state championship. Really wanted to just get these two gentlemen on today to talk a little bit about what their exposure and experience has been at the coaching level. I won't get too detailed into what their bios are. I was looking at Coach Simmons' bio, and it would take us all of the podcast to go over all of the accomplishments that he has gone through. But needless to say, he's got more championship rings than he has fingers. He's been doing it for quite a while. Hall of Fame coach at the high school level. Coach Reid actually played for Coach Simmons for his high school career, then went on to UNC to play there, was also drafted by the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, played a little bit there as well. So both of these guys, a wealth of knowledge, not just as players, but as coaches. By the way, Coach Simmons, I know, played at Liberty University. So came up through the system as a baseball player, ultimately got into the coaching side of things and kind of went from there. So good morning, gentlemen. I appreciate you being on. And
morning.
We'll get started right away with the first question right out of the gate. For you, Coach Greg Simmons, coaching. What got you into baseball coaching and why?
Well, it's kind of funny for me. I knew I wanted to be a coach when I was in the 8th grade. I actually filled out a, what do you want to do when you grow up? And like every baseball player, I said, be a Major League Baseball player. And my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Luffman, told me I couldn't do that. So what do you mean? And he said, the odds of you playing professional baseball are slim. Obviously, he had seen me play. So at that time, I said I want to be a coach. So after that point, I'm the kind of guy that really does the to-do list and likes to know what's ahead of me. So at that point, I began to start keeping I still have my football playbooks from the 8th grade. So I kept everything, still do. Like we were talking earlier, we're moving after living in the same house for 20 years. So I still have all that stuff. So at that time, I felt like that's what I was supposed to do and began that journey in 8th grade.
Wow. Got it. So today, that's a long time ago. I mean, you might have been doing this for a little bit of time here.
We rode horses and mules back then. Not so far along.
The baseball players too, or just the coaches?
Yeah, we played on horses and mules.
That's good stuff. Coach Reid, I know you played underneath Coach Simmons for a bit, and then obviously went on to play professionally, et cetera. But obviously you've now kind of diverted back to the coaching side of things as well. What do you think drove you to get onto the coaching side? Obviously not just in baseball, but football as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me it was chasing the dream to play as long and get as far as I could, and then it was really that was all I had in my mind. So I was chasing the dream. I got to AA as a baseball player and didn't have a great year and got released, and it's like, hey, what's next? And really the catalyst for me getting into coaching was really guys like Coach Simmons and several others that just made such a big impact in my life, and knowing that and how they did that, I felt like my personality and what they had poured into me, part of it was almost a duty piece to pour that back into others. So I knew I wanted to be in coaching in some form or in some capacity. Didn't know at that time if it was going to be a full-time role like it is now, but that's really what drove me into coaching.
Got it. Great. Well, you bring up a good point, because the coaching side of things is more than just coaching. It's more than just X's and O's. You're a mentor. You know, you just talked about some of the coaches that were influential in your life. I know when I played a little bit, it was almost like having a second dad, you know, and for some players, potentially that's almost like a dad. And that's such a huge influential position, especially to some of the youth organizations, middle schools, high school level. players, even at the collegiate side of things, that it's critical, in my opinion, to have, the right person kind of steering the ship. So that brings me to literally my next question, which would be for you guys. When you look back at your playing days, who do you think was one of the most influential coaches that you had? Reid, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't want you to pick Coach Simmons because he's here. I'm sure he was incredibly influential. I know that just on seeing you guys on a daily routine, but other than him, I'll let you start with that one, Reid.
For sure. I think it started with my dad, honestly. He coached me all the way up till I was in middle school. And I think his just methodical approach and cerebral approach to the game really wore off on me. And I think I carry a lot of those maybe outside the box ideas into just as I'm assisting Coach Simmons and our football staff. And then on the baseball side in high school, in addition to Coach Simmons, I played for a travel team and guys, Coach Little and Coach Brick Smith, who played a long time. Those guys really, the team we were on was really good, and those guys were quality men that really did not take anything less than your best effort every day. And so that combined with a very similar approach, different personalities, but similar approach that Coach Simmons provided really instilled those values in myself. And then when I got to college, Coach Fox in North Carolina is I think the main word for him is just discipline and process, day to day, in and out, doing your job. And really the motto there that I really carry is, what can I do today to help this program be better? What can I do in this play, in this at bat, to help my team win? And those are certainly things that I look to communicate whenever I can to our guys now.
Got it. Awesome. Coach Simmons? Well, I think we may have lost his audio again.
Oh, we got it. I forgot to unmute. I didn't want anybody to hear my dogs barking here. But we obviously established I wanted to do this when I was in 8th grade. So when I was in the 10th grade, I had a JV baseball coach who I just was unbelievable. He had played at Appalachian State and was playing travel softball. And he was just a man's man. And his name was Wayne Knox. So I went up to Coach Knox one time and told him this is what I wanted to do for a living. But I'd had a teacher tell me that this was the worst job in America. You couldn't eat, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. So I remember he was a defensive back coach, and I was walking to practice, and I said, "Hey, Coach, you got a second?" And I asked him on the way to practice, I said, "Hey, this is what Miss Lanier told me today." And he goes, "Greg, I've never missed a meal. My wife and I pay our bills, and it's a pretty good gig." And after that, I was bent, and he was a huge influence on me, and he's still living. And when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, I called him and let him know what an influence he was. And obviously playing in college, I played for two guys, Bobby Richardson and Al Worthington. And those guys were incredible men of faith and men of character. And that was a great example to me to how you're supposed to live your life. Not only are they great baseball coaches, but they invested in their players. And to this day, I still call Coach Richardson. It's funny because when I get on the phone with him, I'm as nervous as I was when I was 20 years old. And I'm 54 years old now, and he's 86 and still the same thing. It's just amazing. But those guys had a huge influence on my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One of the things that I try to communicate on the esports side of things, especially on the coaching level, is that, ultimately a good coach is not always about winning and losing. Don't get me wrong. A good coach is going to want to compete and put their best out on the field to play each and every single day, get the best out of their players so that they can compete at the highest level possible. I get that. But a real good coach, in my opinion, is someone that leaves those types of impressions, just like you guys just talked about, that really cares about the individual, not just on the field, but off the field as well, especially as they continue to grow and mature into being young men and take their place in society. So that's fantastic. I know my high school coach was at my wedding, so, and we still talk to this day. So that's good stuff. Talking about coaching, what do you like most? What do you enjoy most? What gets you going the most, if you will, when it comes to your job with coaching in general? If you could speak on that a little bit, Coach Simmons.
Oh, it's crazy. Now with this pandemic and all the stuff where we're shut in, you really find out what you do like about coaching and what you do for a living. And I got to tell you, I miss the guys. I miss the players, being able to be out there. I think they keep me young. So I miss being around those guys. I miss teaching the game. So I enjoy that part. I enjoy being around the guys, and I'm the kind of guy that really enjoys practice, being able to teach, to be able to see the guys improve, struggle with something on one day, the next day come back and get better. So I enjoy that part of it even more than the games, because when you start playing the games, the hay's in the barn, so you get to see. But I tell you, the thing that I enjoy most, I think, is being around the guys and the camaraderie, the competition at practice, and obviously at the games. I think that's important because you're teaching, when you're competing, you're teaching young men how to be men, because they're going to have to compete for everything.
Yep.
So those are the things that I really miss. And I've called. It's crazy. They won't answer the phone, but you text them and they'll hit you right back. So I'm like, so I've been trying to call a number of them and text and just kind of trying to stay connected with these guys. Cause I know it's tough when you take things away. They don't quite understand, because I think they need that social interaction too, to keep them kind of on the straight and narrow sometimes. But I miss being around the guys a lot. I think I enjoy that. And a lot of times in something like this, you find out what you really do like most about coaching. And I think that's it.
No doubt. No doubt.
Not to mention being around my staff. These guys are they're my best friends. And you pull that away. So I miss that. I miss that because there's accountability there. If I'm having a bad day, you can tell your staff and they'll help you. But I miss that. I'm a little bit tired of social distancing, you can tell. So
Understood. I think we all are in the same boat. Reid, what about you?
Yeah, I think the things that get me fired up are just it starts with the relationships with the guys, like Coach said, and watching these guys just continue to grow as players and young men. And I can think of several examples, guys that we're working with, whether it be in the cages, and, something clicks, and then, you see it all just happen for them in the game, and just being so excited for their success and the hard work that they've put in to get to that point. And just having a little piece of that and in guiding them, it just, that's what really gets me fired up. And I have several examples kind of playing through my mind right now of, guys that we coach, and, they maybe weren't a starter, and they got an opportunity and they smoke a ball in the gap to win a game for us, or a guy who's been struggling and he makes a little adjustment and he pops one out of the ballpark, and just seeing the excitement and joy on those guys' faces, and just having a little sliver there. But I think all that starts with just caring for the guys and just being in it with them, and wanting them to succeed just as much as they do in a lot of cases.
Yeah, no doubt. You kind of pour all your time and energy into that sculpture, if you will, that is the player, and obviously you want to see the best product come out of it. So I fully understand that. Staying along those lines, Reid, if we could flip it for a moment and talk about what are some of the biggest challenges or some of the things you might like least overall from a coaching perspective in this modern age, what besides the pandemic, what would you say that would be?
Yeah, I think for me, I think this, and I don't want to group everybody together, but I'm going to a little bit. This generation, and I continue to learn, like you guys as coaches, how to relate to players because every player is different. Their style of communication that works best for them is different, and I think that's a good point that we could talk about in and of itself. But this generation, I think their communication styles are a lot different. Coach alluded to the text versus call. And I think my frustration sometimes stems from what I perceive as a lack of respect being given towards me or towards some of our other coaches, where it's almost a generational gap there. And me being in my 30s, it doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but 15 years is a long time. And some of these kids have only been alive for 15 years. So I think the frustration for me sometimes is, hey, I don't want to have to put my resume in front of you every day for you to give me the respect that I feel, we as a staff deserve. And ultimately, I hope that I've earned the right through our relationship and trust that we can have conversations that are mutually beneficial and carry mutual respect. So I think that's it's kind of two-sided, right? That's the challenge, but when you can break through that's really one of the biggest rewards, like I was talking about earlier, coming out of that.
No doubt. No doubt. How about for you, Coach Simmons? What do you see out there?
One of the things that I dislike, especially now, is the number of, for lack of a better term, handlers that kids have to go through and the voices that hits them. And sometimes it's some parental issues where everybody's talking to the kid different. Everybody has a different agenda. Instead of allowing the high school coach to coach and then the summer coach or whoever, you got so many people talking to the kid and kids by and large, a lot about what Reid was saying, they're pleasers. So they want to please people. And what happens is you get in a situation where everybody's trying to please someone and the bottom line is nobody's happy. So, and the kid's confused and it makes it tough.
Yeah, no doubt. I think a function of both of the things you guys are talking about, we didn't have Prep Baseball Report when we were growing up, or Perfect Game, and all these publications that prop up these kids to make them sound like they're the next thing since Babe Ruth. When the reality is you guys have been around it long enough to know, what you get today may be different from what you get a month from now or a year from now. And all you can do is continue to plug away, grind away, pay your dues and see where you end up. Talent will get you so far, but obviously a work ethic and the respect of the game comes kind of hand in hand with that as well. So while I personally don't mind those publications like a PBR and Perfect Game, I think so much is going into those small minds, and I say small because they're not mature yet, that they feel a lot further ahead in life than where they really are. But we all went through it to some degree when we were younger, right? We were all invincible at some point. And obviously perspective kind of puts that in place. But yeah, I can certainly see both of those kind of aligning there. What do you see in today's game as what you would say your coaching style is? And what I mean by that is there's some coaches that are aggressive. No matter what, they're always going to push the envelope. A number of coaches will just look at their stats and say, look, these are the numbers. I'm going to play by what these are. Some will play to speed. Some will play to power based on who their lineups are. Obviously, there's a lot of new information and new data, metrics, analysis, et cetera, a lot of systems that are newer in the baseball world that a number of coaches are starting to see permeate their programs. You may be a little bit of one side, one other side, or a lot of it all together. I don't know, but wanted to see what you feel you are in terms of coaching style that you bring to the table. What would you say, or where do you say you are on that, Coach Simmons?
Well, obviously, I would say I'm a little bit old school, but you have to evolve. Obviously, now in our sport, analytics are so big. You have so much data that you can go by. So you have to adopt a lot of that. But I think for us, it's still the hard hat mentality. We want to outwork the other team. Philosophically, we'll tell our guys we're going to take more ground balls, more fly balls, more swings than anybody in the city. And the reason we say that is because we believe that repetition, positive repetition, is going to get us to where we need to be. So that's a little bit of old school, but along those same lines, you still have to take the analytical data and apply it. Kids now spend most of their time looking at a screen, whether it be their computer, their phone, those kind of things. So when you can take the analytical data, you can film a kid, you can say, hey, look, this is what it looks like when you're successful. This is where we're trying to go. When they can see themselves, I think that's positive. The days of do it because I said so are over. And I think the coaches that can say they're old school, they're the ones getting out, because if you don't adapt and evolve, you're going to end up being a dinosaur. So fortunately, guys like Reid that's on our staff, the younger guys, can help us push some of the new stuff and explain it to the old guys where we understand it and are able to apply it. But I don't think there's anything, whether you're on the field, esports, it doesn't matter. Hard work is going to pay off.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I think that's kind of where we're at philosophically.
Good deal. How about for you, Coach Fronk? How do you see yourself?
Yeah, I see myself with a combined approach. I definitely appreciate the analytics, but use the analytical piece to communicate to the guys better. So for me, it's a tool to then communicate. It's a data point. It's not the end all be all. From hey, we're working towards these numbers. And even in baseball being such a statistical game, in my opinion, a lot of the numbers that teams used to look at, and some that they still do, players get those in their mind, but those really aren't numbers that really ultimately matter. They're non-controllables, etc. So I also have the lunch pail approach. I feel like for me to get to where I did in my career, certainly there was a lot of God-given talent, but I had to do a lot of things that other guys weren't willing to do along the way, in terms of effort and hard work and staying on the straight and narrow, so to speak. So that's certainly a part of it too. And then I think lastly, I'm an outside the box thinker. So you said push the envelope. I'm willing to ask Coach Simmons or Coach Estep, our football coach, a tough question to get them thinking about it respectfully. But I'm thinking and throwing scenarios at them maybe they wouldn't have thought about. Not that they aren't also thinking about different scenarios, but I'm willing to kind of throw the outside the box thought out there and at least push when I think, hey, this is really a direction we should go in. So maybe against the grain on some of those types of things in terms of in-game strategy and our approach.
Got it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, we have basically run out of time. I'll leave you guys with one last parting shot in respect to, as I mentioned at the outset, really, this podcast, we're looking to get out to a number of high schoolers, middle schoolers, parents out there to kind of understand the coaching side of things and how they correlate and can be very, very similar. If you were to give just one word of advice, or a bit of advice, not literally one word, but a bit of advice to a coach just starting out, kind of getting into it for their first time, starting to kind of feel out the ropes, all of that good stuff. What would that be, Coach Fronk? What would you give them as advice?
My advice would be ultimately get to know your guys and develop a good rapport with them. Develop the trust and the relationship with your guys. And then I think a lot of these other, your culture, your philosophy, et cetera, will fall into place. But it has to start with trust. They have to be able to trust you as a person and your approach as a coach.
Awesome. All right. Coach Simmons?
Well, one of the things I tell a lot of our guys who go into coaching, you got to start with the point that it's not about you. And I think that's a tough part at times. This is wins and losses are going to come. So it's not about you. And I think the other side of that is invest in relationships with your players, because that's going to help. And the other thing that I tell guys is make sure that you have a vision for your program and you work toward your vision, because it's your program. But those are the things that I try to tell guys that are young and getting in this, and because it's tough at first.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a new adventure for those guys just starting out with wondering which way to go. So, guys, I sincerely appreciate the time you have given me this morning. Really a lot of great information. I hope that we will get back to some sense of normality here over the next few weeks into the months. Hope everyone stays safe, and we look forward to seeing you guys out there again real soon. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.